So fall's here. The trees are starting to turn color. I'm here in my yard in Portland, Oregon, and I want to talk this week about editing an image from about this time last year at Silver Falls State Park. It's an image that I captured just below one of the North waterfalls in this really spectacular state park that we have during a workshop at the beginning of fall last year, just that first touch of color. And it's an interesting photo both in the way that I captured it and the way that I edited it. I had to deal with some kind of complex things. I couldn't get everything that I wanted in the image in focus, even using a narrow aperture with my wide angle lens. So I actually captured it in a couple of differentially focused images and blended them, and I'm going to show you how I did that. At the same time, I'm going to answer a question that I got last week from Tom about what exactly focus breathing is and what it means when we say that a lens has issues with focus breathing, which is, well, just wait, I'm going to show you, I'll explain it, and how it's a little bit of a problem for focus stacking and focus blending. We're not actually going to do focus stacking. I'm working on a whole course on photo stacking. I've been really excited about it over this last year, but we're going to talk about focus blending, what the implications for focus breathing with a lens are, and how you can kind of get around it. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I captured, how I edited this image in Silver Falls. This is Approaching the Scene. It's a series of weekly videos that I'm doing every Thursday about all things photographic, about how to capture better images in the field, about how to edit those better. And overall, I just want it to be a conversation about all things photographic, from technology to technique, to the state of the industry today, and I hope you'll join that conversation. Feel free to send questions in to questions@hudsonhenry.com. You can also log on to the website at www.hudsonhenry.com/ats and ask your question there. So, if you're enjoying this video series, I hope you'll click like, I hope you'll click subscribe, send your friends to the videos, and without further ado, let's dive into editing a fall image with some focus blending. So I want to jump in today talking about this image from last fall, this image of this leaf on the rock in Silver Falls. I was there last year. It was actually in September, I think, as that first little bit of color started coming. Silver Falls is kind of one of the crown jewels of Oregon State Park system. It's this really beautiful canyon, kind of tucked up against the foothills of the Cascades in the middle of the Willamette Valley, really close to where I grew up. And I took a workshop in there for a day this year, my Portland workshop, and last year I ran a whole 3-day workshop in there. It's a canyon with 11 waterfalls on a little 7-mile loop with all kinds of different access points where you can get to it pretty close from the car. And there are these just beautiful waterfalls coming over basalt, and some of them you can walk behind, and there are all these trails, and it's out in the middle of really gorgeous farm country, and we saw some beautiful sunsets and did a little time-lapse work and got it back behind the waterfall and did some panoramas from behind waterfalls and just had a really nice time. And we noticed that there was just a hint of fall color in the woods. There wasn't enough to really capture a beautiful fall color scene with the waterfalls, except for, a little tree here, a little tree there. But I found this really spectacular fall color leaf, this beautiful yellow leaf. And I just carried it around with me until we got to a location. I think it's Middle North Falls or Lower Middle North Falls. There are a whole bunch of different iterations of North Falls. I'd have to look at the map, but I think there's Upper North Falls, Upper Middle North Falls, Lower Middle North Falls, and Lower North Falls. I could be throwing one extra in there, so don't attack me if I'm wrong about that. But one of these waterfalls along the way, there was this really gorgeous pool down at the base, and I found this rock, and I had to kind of climb out on this downed log and brace my tripod with one leg in the water and two on this log, and I'm kind of balanced to stay dry, even having rubber boots. And I was able to place that leaf on this rock in the middle of the stream and get this nice composition with a little bit of fall color up at the top of the falls. And my camera was really close to that rock. I wanted that rock to be kind of a central figure in the foreground. Whenever I'm out photographing landscapes, I'm looking at that background is the main thing that I'm photographing, but I want to put something interesting in the foreground that the viewer can really connect to. And I don't use hyperfocal apps anymore for my camera since I have live view. I'm not worried about finding some number. I just zoom in to 100% view on the back of my camera's screen, take a look at a part of the image that I know is infinity, in this case the woods up behind the waterfall, and just focus. I think I stopped down to 11 initially with my 14 to 24 millimeter lens on my Nikon D850, and I sort of focused back from infinity until those trees in the forest behind the waterfall started to lose their sharpness while I was zoomed in on them in the live view. And then I zoomed back out and zoomed in on the rock, and I realized the rock was really blurry. So I stopped down further, I maxed out my aperture to narrow aperture, and I realized that even if as small an aperture as I could go with that 14 to 24 millimeter lens all the way wide at 14, I think, was I photographing it? No, the composition, I like the composition at about 20 millimeters, so I wasn't all the way wide angle. But still, I couldn't get everything that I wanted in the composition that I found in focus. And so what I did was I did that kind of hyperfocal distance move where I focused on the trees in the background and made sure that they were razor sharp, and then kind of backed the focus towards me until they lost their sharpness. And at f11, I think, was I at f11? I'm looking at my image right here. I'm going to pull it up in Lightroom just to remember for sure so I don't talk out of school here. Yeah, I was at f11. And I wanted a half a second shutter speed, and that was about right at 200 ISO. It was a little bit getting dim towards the end of the day. And I took an image, I took a frame, and then I focused on the rock. I zoomed in on my live view. And when I talk about zoom, I'm not talking about the lens. I'm talking about just the view on the back screen of my camera. I zoomed into 100% magnification so that just a piece of that rock was filling the frame. And I dialed the focus closer and closer and closer to me until it just came into focus. And that way, I'm kind of doing the reverse of hyperfocal distance. The closest piece of focus is on that rock that's my closest foreground element, and it's stretching as far as it can out into the middle of the scene. And I knew that, with the wide angle lens of the 20 millimeter lens at f11, that those two planes of focus would overlap not too far out beyond the rock. And I photographed that second image. And, I knew that I could come back after the fact. And at that point, I'd done a little bit of this work, just kind of hand blending images. I'm not necessarily thinking of photographing in the landscape with focus stacking, taking a whole bunch of images differentially focused to blend together automatically with focus stacking software. That's something I'm actually been experimenting with this year, in the wake of how much I enjoyed doing some of this work with focus blending last year, and with the new Nikon D850's automated focus stacking. And I'm actually working on a course right now that I'll be releasing this year on doing focus stacking, whether you have it automated in your camera or not. I'll show you how to get the most out of your camera and get every scene razor sharp and in focus. One thing I encountered when I got back was recognizing that there's a certain amount of focus breathing going on with my 14 to 24 millimeter lens. And I'm just going to pop in. I normally answer questions at the end of these approaching the scenes, but in this case, I'm going to jump in. I got a question about a week ago from Tom via email about focus breathing. What is focus breathing and why does it matter? He read that some lenses that he was looking at potentially buying had some focus breathing issues. Well, what focus breathing is an inherent property of quite a few lenses out there, that as you focus closer and closer and closer, the way that the elements move inside and the way the engineers have designed them, as they get a closer and closer focus, the focal length of the lens actually shifts. And the best example I have of that is this older Nikon 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 VR2 lens that I've been using for years and worn some of the gold off the VR logo here from years in the field. It actually gets a lot, there's a lot of focus breathing. As you focus it closer, I think I read that it goes from being a 200 millimeter lens to a 120 millimeter lens if you focus closer on a subject. And a lot of portrait photographers were not very happy about that. So I should probably illustrate what I'm talking about. So I shot a little video with this lens, just with this coffee cup and this apple, and I'll show it to you. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So as this lens, this is focused close on the cup, and as I focus out towards the edge of the table and then beyond that at infinity, if you look really close at the cup handle, you'll see it's actually zooming. That cup handle goes out of the frame. The apple goes sort of mostly out of the frame. As it zooms out, you'll see that it's actually changing focal length. You'll see it's getting to be a smaller and smaller focal length with a wider field of view as I focus back. So as I'm zoomed out or focused out at infinity, not zoomed, focused out at infinity, that focal length gets tighter and tighter and tighter to where it's really a 200 millimeter lens. I'm looking at a smaller and smaller slice of the world. So it has kind of a zooming effect as it's focusing. That's what we're talking about. Nikon recently replaced that with this really magnificent new 70-200 f2.8 FLED lens, which is my favorite 70-200 I've ever had. It's a little bit shorter. It focuses closer and it doesn't do hardly any focus breathing. So I mounted that lens up without moving the camera a bit, and did that exact same thing here. And here's a lens that does almost no focus breathing, doing exactly the same thing. So here's how it appears. You know, I'm focused close. As I start to focus out, it goes blurry, but it's not zooming. That handle's staying in the same place, the apple's staying in the same place, the table's staying in the same place. Coming back, I'll do it a couple of times here, and you can really get a good look at it. You know, as I focus out, sure, it's blurring and we're getting bokeh with the rim of the cup, but they're not really changing positions in the frame as I move that focus ring. So focusing really close, sharp, and then focusing out towards infinity, everything sort of stays in frame. And I want you to compare that again with that other lens. I'm going to back that up and just play a little bit of that one more time. Watch how the cup and the apple and the edge of the table, you're zooming. You see that? As we focus out to infinity, it's like a zooming effect. So what that means is that as we focus closer and closer to us, it's having the opposite of a zoom effect. We're actually getting a wider scene. And what that does is it makes it difficult to do focus blending and focus stacking. A lot of software is good at alleviating that, but it's just something to know. Some lenses are better at it than others. The biggest reason I bought the 70-200 version 2 is not just that it focuses closer, but that it stays a long lens as it's focused closer. It's a really huge difference. So, in this particular case, I'm going to show you how that shows up. Well, you're going to see the focus breathing issue with the Nikon 14-24 when we go to work on this image and blend these two images. And again, I'm doing focus blending, not an automated focus stacking. We're just going to paint the in focus part of the image in, and I'll show you how you can easily do that. And if you hold off, I'm going to be doing a lot about automated focus stacking and curing a lot of these focus breathing issues. But I'll show you a little trick for that right now. Oh, and for anybody that's really wondering what's this crazy toy behind me off my right shoulder here on the, well, like your camera right. What it is a really cool new toy, and I'll explain it at the end of the video, and I'll also answer another question about model releases that I got. So, jumping in here, I'm in Lightroom. I'm going to go ahead and I'm in Lightroom Classic CC, and I've got some images here. I'm in the library. I'm going to just hit the tab key to close down those left and right panels. And I've got these two images that I captured differentially focused. So one focused up beyond the falls. I'm going to go ahead and look at the loop view of that. One is focused close. I don't remember which one. Let's see. That one looks pretty sharp. If I look back in the trees, I think that's the close focused image. The trees are sharp. Wait, is the foreground not as sharp? Yeah, the foreground's a little bit out of focus. Yeah, there you see it. The front of that rock is a little bit soft. It's not bad, but it's not razor sharp. Here's the one with the rock razor sharp. When we zoom in, you'll see the difference. Nice and razor sharp. But when I have that rock razor sharp, it stretches out a little bit, but those woods in the background and the falls themselves are blurry. And that's not going to look great if I print the image huge. So, and I'm always careful when I do focus stacking. Couple things. I'll notice that I've put my hand in front of the lens before I take the first image, and I put my hand in front of the lens after I take the last image, so I know that those images are part of one thing. And then I like to set their color label red. I do blue for panoramas, yellow for HDR, green for time-lapse, red for focus stacking. And hopefully we don't get too many more things where I'm blending images for one bigger purpose, because I'm starting to run out of colors here. But anyway, so I've got these two focus stacked images. I'm going to actually blend them into, I'm going to combine them into a stack because they really are part of one single image. And I've gone through already and done some adjustments. So if I jump into develop, I've done some basic raw processing on these files. As you can see, I've adjusted their tone and color a little bit. And just my basic raw processing workflow. And then what I went and did was synced both of these files. So I just go ahead and check all. I'm not doing any local adjustments to either of these files. I hit synchronize. And that way they're both edited identically. They were captured identically in manual mode. That's very important at ISO 200, f11, half a second, 20 millimeters. Nothing changed between those two images. And I did it quickly, so there was no change in the light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click them here in Lightroom Classic, and I'm going to go up to Edit In, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to Open as Layers in Photoshop. And when I click that, it's going to create a new Photoshop document with 2 layers. So one of them is going to be on top of the other. And it's going to take it just a second. It's going to create that PSD file and then open it in Photoshop for me. All right, so here we are in Photoshop CC 2018. I have 2 things open sort of on my desktop with the image on there, and you can see I've got layers open and I've got my tool palette open. And I want to go ahead and I'll show you, if you didn't have layers open, you can always go to Window and select Layers, and you can always make sure that the Tools is open there. And you can see I've got these 2 layers, and here's the deal with focus breathing. Do you see it looks, when it's close focused and it's distant focused, like it's 2 different focal lengths, or like I moved the camera? I was on a very, very sturdy tripod where nothing moved. I can guarantee the only thing that changed was the focus ring. But they don't perfectly align. And this is where there's a very cool tool in Photoshop. If you don't have massive focus breathing issues, then what you can do is you select both of the layers. You turn them on, select them both. So I've gone ahead, clicked on one, and then I'll hit Shift and click the other, and they're both selected. And then I go up to Edit, and I come down, whoops, hit Edit, and I scroll down this list. There's a whole bunch of things here, and one of them is Auto Align Layers. And I'm just going to leave Auto turned on. I don't need to check geometric distortion or vignette removal. It's really sort of generally a panorama tool, but it works just fine for this particular purpose too. So I'm going to just go ahead and click on OK. And it's going to align those 2 layers and kind of warp them so that they actually align with one another. And now when I turn off one or the other, you see the only thing shifting in it is the motion of the water. So there we go. That's exactly what we needed to get rid of that focus breathing issue. So as long as your focus breathing isn't too extreme, that auto align in Photoshop is going to totally solve that for you. So now what I need to do is figure out which one of these images is on top of the other. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And what I really want, I'm going to hold down the space bar. And the way I'm zooming in is I'm hitting Command and plus on my keyboard. You could also on PC hit Control and plus. It'll do exactly the same thing. It's that minus key and plus key are zooming in and zooming out. And then I'll hold the space bar down, and that just automatically gives me the hand tool. And I can scroll down here and see the leaf. And I'm pretty sure that this is our distance focused image. So if I turn off, yep. So we know that it's the image underneath has the close focus that we're after. The image that's on top is the distant focus. If I go ahead and scroll up to the top of our image, sure enough, those woods are razor sharp and in focus. Okay, so here's all I need to do a little focus blending. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out for our purposes right now. And I just hit Command 0 to get the fit view where the entire image fits back in my view again. You could easily just hit Command minus, and Control stands in for Command on the PC, of course. So I'm going to not select both layers. I'm clicking off of them. I'm going to select just the top layer. And what I want to do is go up to Layer, and I want to go to Layer Mask, and I want to create a Reveal All Layer Mask. And what that does is it puts a mask on here that you can completely see through. And for those of you that haven't used layer masks in Photoshop, white means that you see all of this layer through it. If it's blackened, then you don't see, or any shade of gray, you're painting that layer off the top of the other. And so all you do is grab your brush and you make sure that that layer mask is selected. You see you can select the image or you can select the layer mask. And with my brush selected, I want to make sure there are a couple of settings here. I want the opacity to be 100%. I want to completely paint that foreground image out. And I want my brush to be really soft. There's a hardness level here, and I want it to be set down to 0 so that it has a real soft edge. It fades from no brush to a lot of brush. There's no hard edge to the brush that I'm working with. And that way, I can just blend it without worrying about making any selections or anything, particularly in a water scene like this. And then I'm just going to zoom in using that space bar and the Command or Control plus key again, and just kind of fill the scene with that rock that I want to paint out. And so I've got my brush selected. I'm going to use my Wacom tablet because I really like painting with my Wacom tablet. It's turned off right now. I'm going to turn it on. It should connect automatically here. And I'm just going to go ahead, and I've got that nice soft brush. I'm going to go ahead and paint that detail back in here. And let's see, zoom in a little bit more. I'm painting that detail back, and all of a sudden what we're seeing now is the underlying image. We're not seeing that out of focus rock anymore. I'm just painting that out of focus out of there and making sure that all we have is what's underneath it. And the water blends just fine, particularly with that soft brush. So now our leaf and our rock are razor sharp. We've painted that out of the scene. And I'll scroll around and see if there's anything else that's not quite sharp. It looks to me as if it got pretty sharp, not far past the rock. We're working with a wide angle lens at f11. Oh, there's this rock down here too. Let's paint that back into focus. You can see that just sharpened up. There's that little hint of a rock down in the corner. And I might even just decide to clone that away because it seems a distraction. I'm also noticing that as it did its little warping maneuver here, it's got a little bit of an edge that we'll have to crop out. I can do that back in Lightroom. I like Lightroom's cropping better than Photoshop's cropping. It's just simpler to use. And I've basically done my blending. You know, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit that Command 0 or Control 0 for you PC users. I'm going to just look at the image. I find this one leaf caught on this bit of branch distracting. I'll show you a really cool tool in Photoshop for getting rid of distractions. So I'm really happy with how this focus blending's done. I'm good with it. I'm going to go ahead and hit Layer and Flatten Image. I'm just going to get rid of all those layers. And then I want to go back up to Layer and say Duplicate Layer. I'm going to create another one just to be safe. I'm not going to work on the background layer. And I'm going to grab this little patch tool. And there's times that you might instead see the spot healing tool here or the healing tool. Instead, I want to scroll down. I'm going to hold it. I'm clicking and holding. I'm going to grab that patch tool. And this is really cool for keeping an underlying sort of pattern and getting rid of distractions. It's a thing that's really great for retouching portraits too. So you can get rid of blemishes. So I'm just going to kind of paint. I'm drawing a selection around this stick and leaf that's bothering me. I'm going to close that loop there. It's completely selected. And then I'm just going to drag it to another piece of water that fits the same scene. You can see it just disappears. I missed this one little bit here, but that's on the layer underneath. That just shows me where I'm going to go to crop when I'm in Lightroom. This looks just a little discordant right here. I might just take it, move it up into here. Well, yeah, I'm not sure I like that as much, so I might just take a little wider swath. This is just something that you kind of pick and choose, move around, find something that looks like it fits. That looks better to me, maybe just a tiny bit more right there, and boom, it's looking good. Same thing with that rock down here that just looks a little out of place to me. I think I'm just going to see if I can take it and paint it out. Let's see. I might just try to put it something like there. Let's see how that does. And then maybe just one more little, oops, I didn't get it very good. I'll just draw it over again. There's like a hint of it left right there, and I'm just gonna kind of drag across here. And just one little speck after another. Boom. There's some little thing here too. I don't think I created it just now, but there it is. I'm just getting rid of those distractions. I'm not totally sure what that little line is, but I'm going to get rid of it too. So, easy enough. And now we have a razor sharp focused image front to back. If I start zooming around in this thing, so I'm going to just use that Command plus key to zoom in, and then use the hand tool, and you can see our woods are sharp, our waterfall is sharp, and our foreground rock and leaf are razor sharp. They'd look great in a big print, especially considering this is a 46 megapixel image. So I'm going to hit Command 0 to get back to that fit view. Once again, to make this a smaller file, I'm going to go ahead and flatten the image. So I'm going to go to that layer menu, flatten the image, and then I'm just going to hit save. I could hit Command S or Control S for you PC users, or I can just come down here and hit save. And the cool thing about working in Photoshop from Lightroom this way is it's going to round trip a PSD file back into Lightroom and stack it with my original. So now if I jump back into Lightroom, you'll see there's that file loading in right now, all ready to go. Boom, and it's ready for me to finish edit, and so just get the style that I want. So I generally do this at the raw processing phase of the I'll raw process the file, but not necessarily going through and do all the finish editing. I'd rather do the focus blending or focus stacking before I do my finish editing. So that's pretty much the little tutorial on fall colors and focus blending and on focus breathing. I had a question last week also about model releases, because I showed the story behind this image from Michoacan, which I'm so stoked I'm going back to this month for the Dia de Muertos celebration. But I had this image of this boy marching along with a group of people for the children's parade in the Day of the Dead down in Michoacan, and someone sent in, what about a model release? Did you get a model release for this young person? And I'm just going to say that if I'm ever creating an image for commercial purposes, if someone's going to sell a product using my image, if I'm going to use that image for stock, if I'm truly selling something using that image for advertising for the thing that I'm selling, well then, I definitely want to go ahead and get a model release. If it's more sort of educational, like the purpose I was using that image was to explain, the method behind capturing it, then I think it's something you don't need to worry about. If it's used for editorial purposes, you don't need a model release. For example, the newspapers don't get model releases to print images that help tell stories. It's basically an image used to tell a story and to help with an educational purpose. I'm not using it to sell something. If you want to publish an image in a book of yours, even if you're selling that photography book, you don't necessarily need to have model releases. You're not selling a product with the image. You're not associating that image of a person with a product. So I think that's the distinction. There are some gray areas, as a former lawyer, as a recovering lawyer, I warn you that it's not as absolutely cut and dried simple as that. But I do think that if you have an image that looks like it would be perfect for commercial purposes, let's say you got an amazing skier and they have, K2 skis just flashing at the camera looking amazingly badass, and you think, man, I should send that to K2 and they might buy it from me for a catalog. Well, then talk to the skier and get a model release, because they're not going to want that image from me if you don't have a model release to go with it. The same is true if you're ever going to sell stock. I know that the prices and the falling value of stock photography makes that a pretty tough way to make a living these days. But for a long time I did sell stock, and I always got model releases if it looked like a commercial image to me, because those agencies will want them. Other than that, I think you're pretty good to go. So that's it for today's Approaching the Scene. Again, if you guys are enjoying this series, please click like, please click subscribe, send your friends to check out the videos. And if you have questions, I'd love for you to join the conversation too. You can send them to questions@hudsonhenry.com, or go to www.hudsonhenry.com/ATS, and you can ask your question there. But hold on, I almost totally forgot to tell you guys what this cool new toy sitting right behind me is. This is a Syrp Linear motion control device that I just got. I ordered it quite a while ago. It's taken them a while to work the bugs out of it and out of the app, but it's a really exciting, lightweight, 2-axis motion control. I'm combining it with a Genie Mini, and it will help me do motion with time lapse and really smooth video motions all controlled by a little app on my phone that I can program start points and stop points and slowdowns and speed ups, and I can actually have the camera spinning as it moves linearly on this slider. So really exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to playing with it. I'm only just really starting to test it. It, along with the forthcoming Nikon Z6 kit that I ordered, are kind of the exciting toys that are coming in the months ahead. So I'll keep you posted on that. And I'm sorry, I almost forgot to mention what it is.